Hello. Good afternoon. Oh, there we go. Now I'm on. Hi, everybody. It is fun to be a part of this panel and not be standing at the podium telling you that we're going on a break or eating lunch. So thank you so much for being here and for being a part of today's panel, Breakout, Introduction to Coleridge's Approach to State Partnerships and Impact. My name is Alison Espindola. I'm the State Program Officer here at Coleridge. And what I primarily do is support states in finding out what it is that they need, what their interests are, what their priorities are, and then helping connect them with resources and tools and a community, which obviously cannot be a one-woman show. So I am so thankful that I have a lot of folks that really are fantastic partners in this process that do this alongside with a very similar mission, and that is to support states and empower them to really make evidence-based decision-making through data. So with me today on this panel, I'm very excited to introduce my three panelists that will be sharing their perspectives in just a moment. But Cami, you possibly have met before. Cami leads Integrated Workforce and Social Program initiatives at Washington's Employment Security Department, helping the state use data to improve labor market outcomes and program governance. Stephanie directs applied workforce research at Rutgers Heldrich Center, partnering with states and Coleridge to embed research in analytic capacity and policy decisions. And Bryan leads enterprise data strategy and integration at Wisconsin's Department of Workforce Development, serving as chief data officer for the workforce data integration system, and advancing initiatives like the longitudinal workforce database and ADRF-enabled analytics to support evidence-based decision-making. So hopefully very clear why they are all up here. Yes. We also partner with nearly every state in a variety of ways across a variety of domains, serving domains such as K-12, education, CTE and non-degree credentials, higher education, corrections, workforce, definitely. And a key part of that work is close collaboration with the Multi-State Data Collaborative, or the MSDC. You may have heard them referenced a few times throughout this conference this week. But the MSDC is a network of states, or a network with states working together to strengthen data sharing, governance, and multi-state research to drive better policy outcomes. I do want to take a moment to recognize some of the MSDC folks. In the MSDC is part of NASWA. So we have some wonderful folks here. We have Sienna, Scott, and Amber. So thank you so much for your continued partnership. It is with these strong partnerships that we are able to have these conversations with states and come together with a really holistic support of what they need. So with that, I do want to share just a quick approach of why this is important to Coleridge. Just a few key points here. Better policy decisions can be made in states, right? Stronger collaboration between agency partners. And really the idea is we want to see those improved outcomes that your states are really striving for, and we want to support that. So we do have kind of a three-tiered approach at Coleridge. The first one is usually my number one focus, trust and governance. So really for me, when I think about trust and governance, it's all about those strong partnerships with states and state agencies like the folks here on the stage and the folks that are throughout this conference, but also strong partnerships with our partner organizations, such as the MSDC and NASWA, or SHIO, or APHSA. So making sure, again, that we have those conversations. So that is a really quick overview of Coleridge's state's approach and our thoughts, but I really want to have our panelists here talk about even just partnerships in general and why having these partnerships across agencies, across state lines is so critical, and ideally how Coleridge plays a role in that, but really sharing those perspectives and experiences. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Cami to share about Washington State's story.
Excellent. Good morning, everybody. As Alison shared, I'm the commissioner at the Employment Security Department in Washington State. I also happen to be the board chair at our National Association, NASWA, so I really appreciate that you shared that partnership, and I'm going to talk more about that when we get into Washington's story. I'm going to be very high level, and then I have a feeling my folks to the right are going to be a little more in the weeds about how these partnerships and specifically collective looks across data can really drive really big impacts. So we are really operating on multiple levels. So as an organization, Employment Security Department, I'm going to talk about how we look at all of this, because I think that worldview matters to how we approach the collective collaboration. On the statewide level, Washington State has a deep history in having about 10 years ago or so, maybe a little longer, really created longitudinal data in a meaningful way. And I think we're at a spot where there's sort of some disparate activities right now that I'm going to talk about to expand what that really is. And that's part of the conversation we've been having with NASWA and Coleridge. And then, of course, on the national level, Alison just mentioned the multi-state data collaboration. I think that's a really huge opportunity that we have, and I feel very fortunate to be able to be connected to that in a meaningful way. Okay, all my slides are coming in one at a time, which is super exciting for me. So I wanted to just talk about our vision and mission at Employment Security Department, because from my worldview, that is the thing that we are really working towards. And collectively, even though we're called the Employment Security Department, I think with the programs we have these days, we could be called the Economic Security Department. And I want to talk for a minute about those programs, because those programs and the impacts of those programs are what drive what it is that we want to know to measure whether we're moving closer to that and really delivering that mission or not, which, our mission all up is really that we contribute to healthy communities in our state by providing access to resources that improve that economic security. And look, there's a picture that would have come in sooner if I clicked more. So we have multiple ways that we look at economic security. One, we have an unemployment insurance that we deliver. It's a giant safety net for folks when they find themselves unemployed, and it is key. We also have the first in the nation long-term care program. And so I have another giant insurance program that we are piloting right now, and our piece of that is very significant. The data we collect gets passed to our Department of Social and Health Services, who really makes those benefit determinations. But what's cool about this is we're leveraging the fact that we also have a paid family medical leave program, and we're coming to employers as one entity, collecting these premiums across these two programs, and bringing data together in one report, which is not only serving our mission because we want our employers to thrive, right? And a lot of them are small businesses, but it gives us opportunity across programs to look at how these insurance programs are functioning. And I've created a single insurance services division to look holistically at this. We are also a key provider in our workforce development system. So we are looking at how we get people across our state great work and careers, and continuing to support them as they move throughout that. And of course, the thing that you all are excited about and that I love about what we have is we also have our labor market and economic information that's really critical to knowing how all of this works. I just wanted to point out our strategic goals, because we look at them in three big buckets, which is how do we keep our agency healthy? How do we make sure that our customers are able to get what they want when they need it in a safe, accessible, and equitable way? And then I think the piece I'm going to talk a little bit about is that we're always building to the future across how we are healthy and whole and have a place where people belong and want to work, and then how that serves the customer across the programs that we have. And I just share that as perspective in our Bright Future initiatives, which will be coming any minute now, we have a few key things, but what I'm going to call out on this is that one of the things that's really important is that we are getting our house in order so that on those state and national levels that our data initiatives are sound, and that is foundational, which is 3.6 on the list, to higher level work that's building out our goal around creative, equitable goals going forward. So we can't do one without the other. And that's how the perspective I bring when I'm collaborating both in our state and nationally and talking to others. And we can't do it without performance systems. And they really come in 4 big buckets. I'm not going to go through all of this, but it's performance management. What are the KPIs? What are the indicators that are telling us that like we're making impact in the strategic initiatives we have and the work that we do? How are we building that into our strategic planning in a very visible way? Yesterday we had measurement day at my executive team meeting, because we do that once a month, because our primary job is to make sure that we deliver our strategic plan. If those are the agency's top priorities, those should ladder up to our state enterprise priorities I'm going to talk about in a minute, but they also should be managed and talked about regularly, which is what we do. We do governance through portfolio management, which is not a concept I came up with, and if anybody wants to talk about portfolio management or agile, I'm your girl. But this is a way that we make sure that we're prioritizing the investments that we're making, and it's clear who has responsibility over those priorities that we're driving. And then the last is organizational capability, because I can't deliver a strategic plan if our organization doesn't have the right capabilities to do that. So we have the system that comes together to say, how is our agency able to do what we need to do to meet our promises and be a partner at these higher levels. So we have a state IT strategic plan, and I'm not going to go through all of it, but I will call out that our goal too is improving lives through data. How cool is that? I love that goal, and I was the executive sponsor for that goal when it came out. I raised my hand to my state CIO and said, I like that one. That's a good one. I'll take it. And it is really near and dear to my heart, because if we're not using data to make those decisions around our investments and understanding what our impact is, we're losing a huge opportunity to really improve people's lives. So that is a state enterprise goal for our entire state. And within that, and I'm not going to read these all to you, these are all public and online, but we have a detailed framework that's been built out within that goal to understand what our data strategy is going to be as a state. And this is fundamentally, I think it's fundamental to having vision around what does that really mean and what are we going to do. And this lays the groundwork for the work that we're doing collaboratively. And that, to me, is a really powerful opportunity. It's part of the things that I'm talking to my colleagues about across the enterprise and the connection to MSDS and to Coleridge. How can we use potential opportunities to accelerate this work? It's still our work. It's the things that Washington needs to do. But what are the accelerators that are out there, or the expertise that we can bring that could be really helpful to how we're moving forward? We also have other connections in our state. Our Workforce Training and Education Board, that's our state workforce board. I sit on that board. They also have a data initiative that I may also be sponsoring that's connected to our IT strategic plan for the enterprise. And so some of the times for me in the position I sit, I'm making connections across the conversations and the things that I'm hearing to say, are you like really integrated? We also have our Washington State Education Research and Data Center. That's an incredible longitudinal database that we've had for some time. That's the work that I talked about that's been in place. That data is used to do all kinds of fantastic things. And as we continue to grow in that and ask ourselves what's missing from that piece and conversation. I think there's plenty of opportunity to do more. We have a customer experience executive order that our current governor issued. Governor Ferguson took office just a little over a year ago. He's just started his second year. And last year he initiated an executive order about how we serve Washingtonians. And so a key voice in this conversation about what do we need to do next to understand impact is the person that runs what's called Your Washington, which is really measuring and supporting our state enterprise to look at how we understand whether we're improving people's lives and how we make that better by working together in very collaborative ways and getting to things that we talk about a lot and are hard to do, like common intake or just leveraging impact across programs and making them easier and more accessible. So when you flash back to what our agency's strategic plan goals are, happy customer totally lines up with this customer experience executive order, and we added it to our strategic plan, because if we can't connect the dots and ladder up across all the state and national things, we lose opportunity to really get the most out of that. And we also have an Office of Equity in our state. It's in statute, and our director for the Office of Equity is incredible. There is a lot of work and initiative going to understand what is our impact on community. And so in the recent conversations I'm convening, these are some of the voices at the table to say, okay, if this is where we're going, then what is it that we really need or want in the way of information to understand how to best do this. And there's the cute little picture. So I can imagine you already have tracked together how it ties. We have had many uses and projects to really connect across the state to drive outcomes. And I think that only way to do that is with good data, which drives good policy, so that we understand where people are succeeding, where they aren't, and what the barriers are to that. And then that drives our opportunity to understand how we fix that. Is that with changes in process, language access, policy, a whole variety of things. We're working on all of those levels simultaneously, and our vision is really to leverage what exists and look at that continuous improvement cycle and figure out how we accelerate the great vision we have and the things that we want to do within our state. And our work right now with Coleridge currently is a little bit early, so I think you're going to get to hear some great voices about where it's more advanced. But I'm excited about that opportunity with our National Association with Coleridge to figure out what those accelerators are. And I put in a contact me slide, but you guys all have the app, so I'm just going to move the clicker on down so you can hear from some other great people.
Yes. Thank you so much, Cami, for that. I really appreciate it. Yes. And as Cami mentioned, the work together is early in the stages of these conversations. And Ahu mentioned yesterday in her opening that we had in the fall the Western States Summit, which really brought together a lot of the folks and states and agencies in the West to have some really focused dialogue about what's unique to that particular part of the country and what those states are looking at. And Cami was instrumental in making that happen and bringing together folks for these conversations. So she really is such a great leader in these conversations and really bringing together, convening folks to have really powerful conversations about how do we accelerate? How do we move that forward? So really excited to be a part of those conversations.
Me too. Thank you.
Yes. With that, I'm going to pass it to Stephanie. She did have some slides, but it looks like they are missing at this moment. So I apologize, but we will pass it along to you.
This is how people get to practice what it means to be
Agile.
agile.
The one time I didn't bring my scribbled notes. So I want to share a little bit about the different ways that we partner with Coleridge from the state perspective, because I think a lot of people think, Okay, Coleridge, the ADRF, they're a technology company. They have this platform where I can put my data, but in New Jersey, we've had a range of different experiences with them, which I'll try my best to remember from memory. So we've partnered with them in several ways. One is as a technology platform. So again, we use the ADRF. That's how we first got involved with Coleridge in terms of putting our data into the ADRF to be able to improve the rate at which we could give people access to the data, but also improve our own ability to use the data. We were working on our internal infrastructure in New Jersey at the time, and totally revamping it. And people were asking for things really quickly and wanted to see deliverables out of that. And we were still focused on data standards and normalization and building the infrastructure within our own environment and getting people access to it. So one thing that is great about the ADRF is that a lot of that is done when they ingest the data for you into your secure workspace. So you don't have to think as much about the governance in terms of data access and privileges and the security and infrastructure. So that really helped us to start to turn out products very quickly while we were still developing our own system to really show the value of that while we were talking about how great it could be and building that internal infrastructure that we do now have. But that allowed us to, again, show that proof of concept pretty early on as we were bringing in new data sources. We've also partnered with them through the Applied Data Analytics training. So I spoke about this yesterday. I know you all heard a lot about that. As both a participant, so we've sent a lot of staff. We send most of our team in their first couple of months of joining the Heldrich Center and starting to work on the longitudinal data system. We also have partnered as a data provider. So in the last year or so, there have been several ADA trainings that have used New Jersey's data. And with that, we've been able to, again, really understand what are the kinds of questions people ask when we have the access to the data. We talked about it this morning at the plenary. As access expands, as the public eyes on your data expands, it really tells you what changes you need to make, what kind of documentation you need to be putting out, what quirks of the data that your few analysts just know how to deal with that others don't, that needs to be addressed systematically or standardized or documented better. So that's really helped us learn more just about the logistics of the data itself, but also what can we learn from it? So what are those other research questions we haven't been asking of the data? We don't have the capacity, we don't have the expertise, it's not kind of within the research agenda that we've developed, but that other researchers or other states are thinking about. So we've learned a lot, both in terms of those policy priorities and research questions, and also how they would approach that analysis. So being able to see the presentations from those ADA trainings from other state groups has been really helpful for us to just understand the perspectives that they're coming at it and again, continue to build data capacity in other states and within our own state as well. We have partnered with Coleridge as a funder, so we know the Democratizing Our Data Challenge grant program. They've been successful in bringing in that philanthropic funding, which is really hard to come by. So we've partnered with them as a recipient of those challenge grants a couple of times. And that's what's funded those two multi-state data projects that we've done in New Jersey. So the multi-state post-secondary report and the multi-state teacher workforce report, both were funded through the DDC challenge grants. And I mentioned yesterday that was instrumental in building what we know about students who graduate higher ed in New Jersey and go on to work in another state. So we understand now how to do that, how to standardize data across states. That is really well documented. I mentioned Angie in Kentucky has done an amazing job of really institutionalizing that report so that it can easily be scaled and produced for other states as well as they continue to join. And the multi-state teacher workforce report was kind of our addition to that, as well as we've learned so much from other states who have built these multi-state systems. We have, for many years, been doing this teacher workforce report, which we thought would be a great foundation for a shared multi-state product as well. Lastly, and I am remembering all four, which is great, we have partnered with them as a collaborator. So there have been several times where Coleridge has received a grant to actually do research. So the first that we've partnered with them in that capacity was through an NSF grant on foreign-born scientists and engineers. And with those grant dollars, they wanted to learn, how do we better identify folks who are foreign-born scientists and engineers in our statewide data systems across several different states? Do we have the right data? What other data sources would we need? How do we build a data model around that specific research area? So that was a several-year project, and that was great because we got to not only receive some funding to get to do that work, but also work with other states and the great scientist team within Coleridge. So beyond just working on the ADRF platform or thinking about these other state partnerships, really getting to conduct research with them has been fun. The other more recent project was around career and technical education. So we worked with their team to do a propensity score matching study on career and technical education students, looking at those who do and don't participate and starting to build in some causal design around the impacts of CTE programs. So those are the four kind of main buckets of how we partnered with Coleridge. And again, I think that our relationship has grown so much over the time, and they've really offered a lot of different supports and improving capacity within our state and expanding and scaling what we're able to do.
Awesome job with no slides.
I'm not gonna lie, I cheated and I have your slides on my phone.
Did I
And
follow them
along
exactly?
and you did
Fantastic.
fantastic. You hit all the points, so she did great. Another round of applause.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And thank you for that. I'm gonna pass this on to Bryan, another longtime partner with Coleridge, and some really rich stories. And I also have the fortunate opportunity, we meet with Wisconsin weekly. So I get to see Bryan all the time, which is fantastic. So thank you so much for being here, Bryan.
Great. Thank you, Alison. And I want to thank everybody in this room and everybody attending this conference for the work that you're doing for your constituency and the impact that you're making. Sometimes it's hard to feel or sense that the magnitude of that impact. But through our work in data and analytics, we try to quantify that, to demonstrate that common message with our stakeholders, funders, and ultimately our constituents who we're providing this great service for. But everybody is doing a great job. And this is one of the things that I love about this conference. I've been to some other industry-driven conferences. I've been through a lot of military conferences. The passion of this group is absolutely off the charts, and the job that the Coleridge Initiative does, actually you're Coleridge now since I came back, no longer initiative, here to stay, doing a great job convening that network, convening the different collaboratives together with many of the other partners that we're also a partner with. But I want to talk quickly about Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development, our origin story. I want to talk about what we do in the Administrative Data Research Facility, and then what I really enjoy, as I just talked about, the networking opportunities and how that we've used a lot of our work to expand into other areas. So the first is our approach towards evidence building, and it's really aligned with our workforce development strategic plans. Workforce development is a system. We do not do workforce development, try to get people jobs in a system. There's an education component, there's a social service component, there's many different layers to that, corrections, so on and so forth. And so we look at this as a system. We want to base our programs in evidence, and we have to do that together with our different partners throughout our state and then across the state lines as the theme of the conference, crossing the borders. We do that through something called a learning agenda. So we matched the federal approach in the Foundations of Evidence Building Act of 2018, where we build a learning agenda that's informed by our business needs as well as the different strategies that we're governed by. Our current learning agenda addresses three main topic areas, looking at career pathways to good local jobs with family sustainable wages. We are assessing future workforce needs in technology, workforce trends, and supports needed, and then improving customer service and service alignment. And so those are the main goals. Those are the North Stars that keep us in line, because as researchers, we want to do everything, and we want to get all the data. but that helps us do the prioritization as our funding levels are going down, as our capacity starts diminishing. But that really helps us identify where we need to put our efforts and deliver products. We do then work with our partners. So internally to the Department of Workforce Development, I have 6 divisions we're a very decentralized department. We pull it together when we need to pull it together, as we did during the COVID-19 pandemic. But for the most part, we have a very diverse set of programs: workers' compensation, equal rights, unemployment insurance, the workforce development program, vocational rehabilitation. What we did is built the longitudinal workforce database, and working through that master data management of all the different systems, all the different federal requirements for those programs, state requirements. And finally, we have a system that is fully functional, and as of this past year, we actually completed it. We added the workers' compensation claims, as well as equal rights complainants. We now have a single source of truth for the customer account. So that's the internal to DWD. Now, how do we get outside of DWD? When we began our work in the Workforce Data Quality Initiative grant of 2019, it wasn't very long before we were on a webinar with WDQI learning about the Coleridge initiative, and Dr. Julia Lane provided a great brief of this it was newer technology now, but the Administrative Data Research Facility. It was the thing that we were looking for to get over a lot of the data sharing and contractual compliance disputes that we just couldn't get over with many of our other agencies and partners that we work with. And so the ADRF, Wisconsin received a Democratizer Data Challenge Round 1 grant in 2021. We executed not only a data sharing agreement with the Coleridge Initiative, as well as our partners, in order to put our unemployment insurance data and some other workforce data into the ADRF. We executed a applied data analytics training in 2021, and that was the first time we brought and introduced this concept of a shared platform that's secure. It follows the 5 SAFE framework, and we were able to bring in education partners, partners from actually other states. We had a couple of attendants from the state of Illinois, Arkansas, as well as people throughout our department who were introduced to this technology. We developed and revised the Illinois Unemployment to Employment Dashboard, made it to the Wisconsin dashboard, and we made a key change and that change was that we did it in our code, or our shiny dashboards, as opposed to the Tableau that Illinois had done, and that was a great cost-saving measure that we identified. That dashboard, here we are years later, during the shutdown, we were able to use that data to continue to pull out some of the information that we normally got from the federal government as far as unemployment insurance claims. And so it did provide great value internal, and that was the vision of the ADRF and the unemployment to employment dashboard, is getting that real-time information. We now have 2 additional projects that are not run by the Department of Workforce Development, working with the Coleridge Initiative. One is with the Medical College of Wisconsin. This is a project through the Centers for Disease Control. I believe it is about sickle cell anemia and tracking. And the medical college is tracking unemployment and employment outcomes of that population. And so we worked together with Coleridge. Again, we didn't want to give our entire unemployment insurance wage to a college, a hospital that was a private college within a hospital. And so we were able to find that neutral area in the Administrative Data Research Facility. And then the second project is a very big one. It is called Tools of the Trade. It is funded by the Ascendium, and it's a Mathematica evaluation of a scholarship program with apprentices. And so we're working through the ADRF, and again, using that common technology to save costs. We don't have unlimited IT hours, and also the ability to build up those secure environments on our own. So we enjoy leveraging the Administrative Data Research Facility. And last and I think is absolutely essential, is that networking opportunities that we receive, that Coleridge convenes for us. Everybody I run into here wants to do the right thing. They're looking out for their constituency, and that also, it infuses really this enthusiasm. When we talk to partners who've never come here, and it's almost like we bring Coleridge with us, and we talk about, here's a new way to reimagine data sharing and projects through this administrative data research facility, through the applied data analytics training, which in subsequent data analytics training, we've actually had people from our education system, the University of Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Technical College system. They've attended other states' classes with our DWD staff. And so they've built, continue to help build that relationship. And a couple of to me, these are huge breakthroughs, because when I started, when we would ask a question or for data from some of our partner agencies in the state, they were very short conversations, and they ended with, no, we can't do this. And it's a confidentiality thing. Just in the last couple of months, we've made significant strides. We just delivered data, although it's not through the ADRF. We just delivered data to the University of Wisconsin system for the first time in order for them to evaluate the full scope and extent of their students' outcomes. So they have a pilot going on with 2 cohorts, one from 2014, and then one more recently from 2019. And they're looking at those long-term outcomes. Where are people going? Again, they were along for a ride as we were going through the Coleridge experience, and we got through all the legal hurdles. And then the second one that I'm excited about is with our Department of Public Instruction. While we haven't crossed the finish line yet, this was an agency through the, they call it the WISE system. It's part of the state longitudinal data system. We have now, or they are in the process of building a shared services where we can actually share a common identifier. And then when those research requests come in, we will have that unemployment insurance data all set up and ready to go. And so those are huge things that are going to pay tremendous dividends to go with a lot of the information and new insights that we've learned working with Coleridge as well as working through our learning agenda. And in the chat of the app and this session, because I don't have any slides, I did put the link to our website, dwd.wisconsin.gov/WDIS. And on that site, you can see the evaluations that we've completed. There was one on Title I, the impact of training in WIOA, or the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, Title I. And we found a positive correlation there between the training and then the outcomes, as well as some other return on investment studies, and there's quite a bit more. So I work very closely with our Chief Evaluation Officer, Ellie Hartman, who is able to author a lot of these studies and really direct our limited staff to go through and do a great job with those evaluations. So thank you, and again, thank you all for what you do for your constituencies.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bryan, for that. And I really appreciate all of the insights. Now, before we jump into the Q&A, I do want to share a few key takeaways. Ooh, hello. Key takeaways that I think from these stories, but also that I've learned in working with states and building these partnerships and being a part of these conversations, is that what we're learning across states is that partnerships and relationships set the foundation for trust, and trust enables the data sharing. Capacity drives sustainability, but evidence must be actionable. So the relationships and governance come first. Then the things like training and capacity building and infrastructure play a part. But the result of the data linkages and what is produced must inform real decisions. It's a concentric circle, right? It's not a linear process. This is constantly evolving and moving and flowing together. So What's nice though, and I think this is so evident in all of the conversations today and all of the things that you all shared, is that relationships and partnerships are at the center. It's the foundation for everything that enables the work to move forward, because when you establish these relationships, when you have these conversations, it creates that trust that moves all of the work forward. So before I open the floor to all the folks out there dying with questions, I see them spiraling away. I do want to ask if there's any other comments that the three of you would like to share, any final thoughts before we unleash to the world.
I guess I would amplify something you just said, Allison, which is the only way that collaboration and partnership actually works is when you are open and consistent, and I think even persistent in these conversations, so that that foundational connection and relationship starts. And I think that's what allows some of what I see both within my own agency across our state enterprise and at the national level is people will answer the phone when I call, and I'm old, so I do call sometimes, or respond because they trust in that relationship. And then that opens conversation, dialogue, and ability to move forward. So just underscoring that is really important. And I want to say, like, it also extends, I think Alison mentioned the Western States meeting that we had. That sparked a lot of connection and ideas for me, and places where maybe I haven't had connection or conversation in the past, and amplifying what Bryan said about the power of that is that you all pick up the phone when we follow up from something like this and say, oh my gosh, I talked to you about this thing, and can I connect you with, if it's not me, someone on our team, to learn more about how you did that. And that's a very generous thing that I think, I'll just proactively thank you all for, but also say that comes through that personal connection that happens. And that's, I think that really is foundational. It's sort of core to my DNA anyways, but it has been cornerstone to what has led to some really significant opportunities for cross-state collaboration and also within my own state for peer-to-peer. We are so decentralized in Washington State. If something could be in a different agency, it is. And then that takes and drives a lot of the need to really have genuine, authentic relationship.
Any final thoughts, Bryan or Stephanie?
I'll just share the approach we've taken has always been, putting people first, the processes, working through those processes, and then getting to the technology. The common problems that manifest themselves in our learning agenda, that's where we start with our relationship building. Is we both have, whether it's the Department of Corrections, the Department of Workforce Development, the education departments and workforce development. We have those common concerns, common questions, and that's where we start in building the trust from that core, and that has really helped us move a lot of relationships forward. It's not the technology or the vendor-centric approach, and so it's been the opposite, and that's shown a lot of success in Wisconsin.
I would just encourage everyone to leverage the supports that are in place outside of your agencies and organizations. I think one thing that works well in New Jersey in terms of the structure of our P20W system is that it's kind of managed by Rutgers University, which I think helps to serve as the convener of the state agency partners, because they don't have the capacity internally to focus on this. They have full-time jobs outside of the P20W system, so it helps them to have us as a support to organize the governance meetings and manage the research agenda and the external applications for requests and put together the research products. So that's really been a success, I think, in New Jersey, but we kind of think about that beyond New Jersey and just our system as well. And what are those other platforms that already exist that can help us convene more agencies or across states. So there's Coleridge, which does a great job of this, the Multi-State Data Collaborative, DISC, and NASWA, and other groups who really help support and have that platform to share information, and we can reach out to those supports and ask, you know, I'm struggling to think of what we should do for this specific legal issue that we're having in New Jersey. Do you know of other states who are experiencing this, and can you connect us with them? And they're always happy to do so and serve as that connection point. So, you know, I would say just in terms of partnership to really leverage those existing networks that are there to help us.
Thank you. Okay, it's your turn out there. What questions do you have regarding state partnerships, or what partnership challenges are you facing that you want to pick their brains about?
It's almost lunchtime, I know.
Right? Well, I do have a couple of questions. So while you're still pondering your questions, I'm going to ask some. I think one thing that I found really fascinating, and I really appreciated the high-level overview and then getting more granular as we went, but Cami, you talked about this national influence and how it kind of worked down into your initiatives and how you want to work. And then Stephanie and Bryan, you both talked about people first, and well, you did talk about keeping your customers happy. So that is true, you did say that too, but, which I loved that line, like through all of yours, but the local guidance and having people influencing, so kind of that top up to bottom up approach, how do you balance, here's the constituents on the ground and what they need and what they're saying, with here's what's coming down from the national level, and guiding your decisions, because you are kind of that intermediary ground where you have to balance those. So when you get into the weeds with that, what are some of those conversations like, and how do you consider those when you're planning to move forward?
I can start, and then I'll let you two jump in. I would say from my perspective, it's a constant balancing act. That's why governance is important. So I talked about our governance model, and when you look at our 3 goals, you know, healthy ESD is about our employees and teams and like how they deliver, which is a very central on the ground interaction that happens. So we have channels through those pathways to really bubble up the things that are most important. Our customer experience executive order helps us also drive that we have that customer focus. We are very people centric, and I constantly have to remind our team that we can't just start new things. And that's why we spend so much time as an executive team managing to our strategic priorities, which we try to balance across both the things you're talking about, Alison. And so when I'm at these things and I get super excited about some new idea, then I have to eat my own cooking, right? About how does that fit into something that we're already doing, or that is like potentially something that goes into our backlog and list of priorities of something we want to do that may not be an initiative in our strategic plan or a project under initiative in our strategic plan today, but it's going to become that. And we revisit that strategic plan constantly, but we have a really deep run through every spring, so across this 4-year span. And the question we ask ourselves when we get to that conversation is, are these still the right initiatives to drive this goal? And are our measures telling us that these initiatives are making the impact that we need them to make? So it's a tension that happens weekly in our agency because of both our governance structure, our executive team interacting with our promises, which is what I also call our strategic plan, and then our measurement to understand that whether or not we're having impact. And then when a legislature reaches out, you know, and we get other external influences, or our session just ended and there are initiatives that passed, we have a way to bring those in and prioritize those against a set of criteria that include what our appropriators and funders are telling us we must do. And so this year, for the first time, we stopped intake of any new projects during our legislative session. Historic, we've never done it. And there was an exception process, but there was absolutely nothing new during session until we knew that we had a handle on what was coming through session. So those are the kinds of things we do to try to balance.
Very similar in Wisconsin. We use learning agenda. Those are our North Stars. And as we go through projects, and I love the multi-states data collaborative and the work that National Association of State Workforce Agencies does with that, because those are great ideas, whether it's the industry of ideas, the work that University of Illinois Chicago, University of Michigan, some of the projects that we've seen, we've actually reached out, had them come do briefings for us, virtual briefings. And what we do is we take that learning agenda and we look and see where those overlap. And again, because oftentimes they're using the administrative data research facility, and unemployment insurance wage data is what they're usually asking for. There are usually ways to find efficient ways to accomplish that, but we always go back to that learning agenda and our strategic plans.
Yeah, we similarly have our 3-year research agenda where we try to bring in as many voices as possible to inform what we're working on and what those outcome measures look like. But it is something we're really prioritizing this year, of bringing in, more constituent voices and stakeholders to understand not just what they need and how it aligns with our research agenda, but like of the products that we've developed from that, how would they use it? How would they improve it? Leslie Huebsch keeps telling us, it's not a field of dreams. You can't just build your reports and put them on your website and hope that people know about it and come to them. We really have to engage the stakeholders and understand how and why they're using it. So that's something that we're kind of coming back to in the development of some of these annual products, that we know these are the kind of topic areas we should be focused on. These are the metrics that make sense, but they're not necessarily presented in a way that's most useful to the stakeholders. And we know that because we still get a lot of questions from institutions of higher ed saying, it would just be great if you had a dashboard that showed us the employment outcomes of our graduates. And we say, we do have that, it's on our website, and they just didn't know about it. So instead, we're now engaging them more thoughtfully and more in a more standard way, so that we're not just hearing, it would be great if you had this thing you already have, but now that I know you have it, what can you change about it to actually make it useful to me?
Okay.
Yes, fire away.
I don't know if this is on, but I think you can hear me. I'm curious to hear what your stories are of when things might fall out of alignment. We brought up legislators, we brought up, new ideas that surface and new initiatives and new drivers. And I'm curious how you've each navigated those times when things might come up that are outside of your current strategic plan, and there may be political forces behind those efforts that perhaps don't align with the work that you're doing across in the multi-state initiatives.
Go ahead.
That's a great question, and thank you for that question, because that happens often. Our approach in Wisconsin is, with our learning agenda and evidence plan, is we revise it and review it every year. And so we do get, and I know during the Recovery Act, which the Rescue Act, I'm sorry, of 2021, we had quite a few new projects. We called it, one was the Workforce Advancement Initiative, and we had another one called the Workforce Innovation Grant. It's how our governor elected to invest workforce development dollars throughout our system. We didn't have that on our learning agenda or bingo card before 2020 when we built our learning agenda, but we integrated it in through governance because we're meeting with those executives often. And that was, and plus what really helped there is we had resources coming to help us be able to lift and move over onto different priorities, and so we were able to bring in staff and things like that. So that's our approach is, if it is, a demand of our constituency and the political leadership, and that's what they will, that's what we need to incorporate into our processes, and so making that a flexible strategy.
Think about this from the external applications we receive to use the SDS data. they do have to align with our research agenda, which is fairly broad in terms of just, cross-sector outcomes, employment pathways. So it's fairly easy to tailor a request to fit into that. But there are times where it falls outside of that, where it might be a topic area similarly that's just in demand, of interest, important to the state. So in those instances, we would go back to our executive leadership to discuss whether or not they think it's a priority and we need to revise to make sure that we're expanding our research agenda and opening up those requests to that topic area.
Probably not wholly different, but I would just add, at my level, I try to connect with the team to understand what that impact's going to do with the existing work, especially when it comes without resources, which is pretty much all the time, so that I can have that conversation with an appropriator, with the governor's office, to say, hey, we are going to do this because that's the direction we've been given, but this is the impact to other work and priorities that we have, so that there's clarity. And there are moments where you just have to suck it up and manage and do it all. That's a technical term I use a lot at work, but where you have to say, okay, we can't put all these things down and we have to add this, so how do we reprioritize where some of these primary resources are contributing right now? That's not ideal. Ideally, we do exactly what Stephanie and Bryan shared, which is, integrate it, bring it in the plan, and make adjustments accordingly. Like, that's ideal. But I really try to get our team to be able to tell me impact of bringing something additional in, so I can go have that conversation, whether it be with our legislature or otherwise, anywhere that I can. And sometimes it's not an option and that doesn't work, but I want people to have eyes wide open about what that might mean to us.
Hi, Talisa Jackson with WorkCred. We do a lot of work in regards to workforce credentialing. And so my question is really around that. So in our space, we hear a lot about states developing credentials of value, and that they're using, labor market research in order to help identify those credentials of values. And so wanted to ask a question around what are you all doing, or states doing, right, in regards to thinking about how can you best partner with other states in order to help validate those credentials of values, or even partnering, we do a lot of work with certification bodies, right, partnering with certification bodies, right, in order to get accurate data about those credentials that are non-degree.
I can start. I'll start, and I'll be very, very brief. I see we're running out of time, but we just received the Workforce Data Quality Initiative grant in Wisconsin, and one of the focus areas is eligible training list provider list through Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. We're also working very closely with our technical college system on an opportunity, the CTO, connecting talent and opportunities through Department of Education. And so we've begun that in Wisconsin, trying to get those resources and align with our partners. We see that as a critical part of the future for our workforce.
And not totally different in Washington State, I would say our Workforce Training Education Coordinating Board, which is a totally separate state agency and entity, manages our eligible training provider list and does a lot of that convening. I sit on our workforce board, but that's where a lot of that conversation, then nationally, similar to me, like we're trying to connect different places with different states to learn from them and share to the extent that it makes sense.
Well, we are right at time. We did good. Woo! Well, thank you all so much for being here and for participating in this conversation. There's a couple of quick things that I do want to mention. First of all, faux pas for Allison. I didn't mention Carrie is also here. So thank you, Carrie, for being here.
The wonderful Carrie Yates.
Yes. So I was like, oh no, I messed that up again. Woo! Good things. But also, a few times today we talked a little bit about the Democratizing Our Data Challenge, as well as the Applied Data Analytics trainings. So if you're interested in getting more information about that, for the DDC, the Democratizing Our Data Challenge, there is kind of an Ask Me Anything info session tomorrow morning with Deedham Tuzeman, who is the VP of Research with Coleridge. She oversees DDC. So if you are here tomorrow morning, stop in and chat with her, and she can get you all sorts of good details. And then also the unconference breakout session that happens after lunch that I know you all have heard about. It's going to be led by Teresa Sears, who is the director for training. So she is a great person to grab and ask for more details about the ADA trainings and capacity building. So if you have additional questions and want to get into the nitty-gritty of that, you can grab those folks, or you can obviously also grab our panelists for their impact and their insights on that. But I want to thank you all so much again for being here and for being on this panel, and let's go enjoy lunch.
Thanks, Allison. Thanks, everyone.